Over the past few months, our state and much of our country has progressed into a frightening weather pattern. Without going any further into detail, I am sure most Americans and probably everyone in this audience knows exactly what I am referring to. The drought that we are currently experiencing is a top concern on most people's minds, including mine. I would like to share with my audience how this drought compares to those in history, and how the drought conditions are not only affecting each of our lives at home, but also lives across the country. Here in the state of Indiana, drought conditions are being experienced to some degree in every county. 100% of the state has been designated as experiencing at least moderate drought. There has been a natural disaster declared in 64 Hoosier counties, with over half of the state labeled as extremely dry and a quarter labeled as exceptionally dry, the highest category used by the United States Drought Monitor. The lack of rainfall doesn't stop at our state borders, though. Every state in the nation has areas that are experiencing at least abnormal dryness, with widespread extreme and exceptional drought conditions covering a large portion of the central U.S. These devastating drought conditions have prompted the United States Department of Agriculture to release its largest declaration of natural disaster areas in history, including over 1,000 counties in 31 states. The extreme and historic drought that we are experiencing has been the result of several variables coming together in a way that doesn't normally happen, but unfortunately now is the exception. The biggest contributing variable is La Niña. La Niña is an event in which cold water rises to the surface of tropical Pacific Ocean waters. This change in water surface temperatures affects weather patterns around the world. Specifically, North America tends to see drier weather patterns when this happens. On top of the effects of La Niña, another factor contributing to the dry conditions is the weather we experienced this past winter. Our snowfall totals for the season were considerably below average, and our temperatures were unusually warm. As spring arrived, the warm temperatures continued and brought us record-breaking heat waves. These unseasonable conditions gave us a head start on drought conditions, as the soil had captured less moisture than normal and it was able to dry faster than normal as we progressed into summer, which is normally already the most arid season. The drought we are experiencing today in 2012 brings up memories of the year 1988 for those of us who are old enough to remember. That doesn't include me, but some of you. The story of this drought is quite familiar, as conditions deteriorated due to several converging variables, much like today. Precipitation began slacking off in late winter, and changing ocean water surface temperatures kept North America in a pattern of dry weather. As spring and summer came along, record heat waves came as well, accelerating the drying of soil. At the peak of this drought, which lasted from 1988 into '89, 45% of the U.S. was suffering from drought conditions. In comparison, today we have surpassed that number, and conditions continue to decline. Until now, the drought of 1988 was considered the worst since the Dust Bowl of the 1930s, which has been referred to as the major climatic event of the nation's history. Lasting from 1934 to 1941, this sustained drought began in a way very similar to the droughts of 1988 and 2012, resulting from the effects of La Niña and exceptionally hot temperatures. Compounding the problems of excessive heat and drought, the nation was also going through the Great Depression at the time. As an attempt at compensating for financial stress, farmers plowed more land to be planted as grain crops than ever before. At this time, the practice of no-till farming had not yet been widely implemented as it is today. The loosened topsoil, receiving no moisture from rain, turned to dust, leading to the disaster known as the Dust Bowl. Frequent strong winds kicked up massive clouds of fine topsoil, carrying it far across the country, and some Americans even died of suffocation during a major dust storm. Some weather analysts have compared the drought we are experiencing today to the conditions which led to the Dust Bowl. There have been events of blowing dust in the current drought, even here in Indiana. However, it is unlikely that the severity of dust storms will match that of the Dust Bowl, as agricultural practices have improved since then. Even so, it is a frightening similarity of drought conditions. The impact of the drought we are facing today is very widespread, affecting the majority of households in Indiana and the U.S. Our daily lives have been altered by burn bans, the seriousness of which some people have learned the hard way. Even Independence Day was a much different celebration than normal, with personal fireworks being banned during the week of the 4th, and most professional displays being canceled for fear of burning embers starting wildfires. Daily Hoosier lives are also being altered by a long list of cities with suggested or mandatory watering restrictions. In addition to the day-to-day effects the drought is having on households, more long-term effects are being experienced as well. The unusually dry condition of the soil has actually been found to be causing damage to some house foundations. Clay soil, which is common here in the state of Indiana, shrinks as it dries. This shrinking creates voids in the soil, destabilizing the foundation which sits on top of it. A less expensive but more obvious consequence of the soil being so dry is the stress which is being displayed by vegetation. While some lawns have only gone dormant, many have actually died because there is no water falling to keep the grass alive. Flowers, gardens, small trees, and other plants are suffering, and even older, more established trees with deep reaching root systems are showing stress. These dry, stressed trees are becoming brittle, making them more susceptible to damage in the event of a windstorm. The effect that the drought is having on our lawns and landscaping is certainly disheartening, but even more serious is the damage that has been done to crops. Not only has the lack of rainfall been an enormous blow, but the extended periods of heat have taken a toll too. These stressors have come at a crucial time during plant development, and for the most part, the damage that has been done is irreversible. Corn has been the hardest hit, with only 26% of the nation's corn rated in good condition, according to the USDA. Soybeans have had quite a setback too, with only 31% left in good condition. These ratings are the lowest the nation has seen at any time of year since 1988, and the growing season isn't over yet. When the growing season began, record corn harvests were expected, as this year's corn crop is the largest planted since 1937. Now, farmers are hopeful that they will have anything left to harvest. Because of declining conditions and decreased demand, the prices being set by the grain market are climbing to astounding highs. However, as many farmers have said, $7 corn is no good if I have no corn to sell. The increased selling price is not expected to outweigh the decreased yield. Farm income is likely to take a significant hit, in turn weakening the economies of our rural communities. Beyond personal and local impacts, the drought of 2012 is predicted to have a noticeable bearing on the economies of the Midwestern and Plains states. Nationally, agriculture accounts for approximately 1.2% of the United States gross domestic product, a small enough percentage that a lasting national economic influence is not anticipated. Consumers may see prices at the supermarket rise within the next year due to shortened supply, especially in products made and sweetened with corn and soy. This includes meat and dairy products, as a large portion of United States grain is used in livestock feed, and livestock farmers have been reducing their herds because they simply don't have enough to feed the animals. These raised food prices are projected to be short-lived, though, and they will most likely not bring about inflation pressure. Whether talking in terms of the economy, the crops, our yards and watering restrictions, or the history being made, it seems today that everyone is talking about the drought of 2012. It has been the subject of countless news stories and the subject of conversation between neighbors, friends, and acquaintances. Certainly, the drought hangs in the minds of most Americans, especially Hoosiers. I hope that today this audience will leave with a broadened knowledge and having learned some interesting new trivia about one of this year's most discussed topics.